Okay, welcome to our Clean Network call today. Before we get started with our presentation, I'll ask if there are any announcements.
Well, I'm aware of the Heartland Institute up to new shenanigans, which we at PRI are meeting right after this with Glenn Branch from NCSE to talk about what to do. I'm assuming everybody's seen that they are planning to send out a pamphlet to, I think, pretty much every high school teacher and the science teacher in the country again. So, bah.
Don, we would love to also, Gina and I have a conversation with NCSE, completely separate topic tomorrow, happen to have it on the calendar, so we'll check with them too. Let's connect if there's something we can all do together.
Yep.
And it just makes me think we should be finding money for somebody that we can do the same thing with, like the right information. Can we just do mailings too?
Well, that's, they inspired the Teacher Friendly Guide mailing initiative. We said if they're going to send their nonsense to all those people, we should send good info to that same set of people. And so they inspired us to do a crowdfunding campaign, which before the pandemic hit, we had sent packets to every public high school in 15 states with copies of the Teacher Friendly Guide, one hard copy and enough electronic copies for every science teacher in the building. And then the pandemic sort of brought a close to that maybe will reincarnate, but we're gonna, so yeah, yes, there should be funding for us.
I saw Gina had a comment about getting all of those addresses, possibly through the Council of State Science Supervisors. Maybe there's an avenue there.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Moore, who also is the author of the chapter that we added to the book, because we were about to go to press when the Heartland Institute stuff hit the news. So we weren't prepared to rewrite the book to incorporate that stuff, but we added an FAQ chapter that Alex wrote. And Alex is also the person who coordinated the mailing effort. So I don't remember how she tracked down addresses for all those high schools and many with names of actual humans on them, but she did that. So we can talk to people about how that was done, but that was done by Alex, so I don't know the ins and outs.
John, is there any thought, is there any updating that you're going to be doing to it?
Yeah, well, actually we have been slowly bringing the Teacher Friendly Guide into our Earth at Home platform and de-teacherifying it. So I think we've got 3 or 4 chapters done now. I'll put the link in the chat. And it's been kind of slow going because everything takes longer than we want. I don't know if we don't have a timeline for updating a print copy, but we sort of have that in the back of our minds.
So Don,
Frank, go ahead.
sorry, just get my thing down.
Okay.
So I mean, I think, Don, one of the things I'm thinking about is, like, back in the day when I was a classroom teacher and I would receive this, and right. and I'm going to NSTA national meeting, and one of the things we've learned in those booths for forever is that when a teacher walks into the NOAA booth, and this is not about NOAA, but there's a credibility that comes with this information when it comes from a federal agency like NOAA or NASA. And there's a whole cast of characters that are now operating in this space. And so I'm thinking, like, what's the strongest, most impressive kind of offering to teachers, schools, superintendents, school boards, that is like, what's the strongest way we could put together? PRI is awesome, but I think that PRI could be seen as, not the place that everyone would go, yes, this totally makes sense that this comes from them. And, so like for me, at the federal level, the National Climate Assessment is probably the best climate information for teachers to start with, more so than any NOAA or NASA website. But there's other things like the Clean Collection. If you want a collection of reviewed resources that's out there right now, it's probably one of the best. But how do we put all of this together in a united front approach? And with all due respect to everyone's efforts.
Yeah.
So even my own, right? But I'm just thinking, like, how do we position this so that it just doesn't have any weakness? And that's I think as a community approach is the best one.
Absolutely.
So, how do we make that package? I'm almost thinking, like, sorry to be so belaboring so long, but like the AGI Earth Science Week packets, that's a whole bunch of stuff, but it's still branded AGI.
Right.
So I don't know what the right solution is, but I'm just, putting it out there.
Yeah. And free associating just a bit. I am planning to be at NSTA in Houston, and PRI has a shared booth with other paleontological organizations. So thinking about some way to do a huge shout out around various things, climate change education from our booth is a thing we're thinking about, starting to think about.
Awesome.
Okay,
Happy to talk.
thank you. Any other announcements?
Well, I do have, this kind of snuck up on me, but the New Jersey Climate Change Education Summit, February 2nd to the 4th, is coming out. I put a link to it. And I was talking with some of the organizers, and we're going to do some side things, but it is an example of how state level climate change education is really starting to roll. I think it's a really important intersection of work because it's state work for state by state, kind of NGSS. And I've seen this with the Mid-Atlantic Climate Change Education Conference, but the state level is a really powerful concept. So I just think that, I just want to, one, signal that this is important, and two, that why is it only New Jersey that's got one of these? Why aren't other states doing this kind of state level work?
Okay, thanks Frank for sharing that. Anybody, any other announcements? Just one thing I want to put out there is that we had scheduled a climate solutions workshop with En-ROADS for teachers it was originally scheduled for the 19th of January, but we've postponed that. And it's going to now be on March 22nd. So we'll let everybody know again, but we just want to get the word out there so we get some registrations. Okay, so Gina has put in the chat that there's a reminder to complete the Clean Network survey if you have not done so already. Okay.
And I'll just jump in, one more clean reminder. We are starting our clean webinar series in a few weeks in February, and just keep an eye out for announcement of those dates and registration links. And we will round that out with Tamara's climate interactive webinar as well. So just keep an eye out for big webinars coming everyone's way. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to our presentation today. I am really thrilled to introduce our guest speakers from SubjectToClimate, Dan Castrogano and Margaret Wang. I have been, I'm on the board of directors for SubjectToClimate along with Ingrid, who is a longtime member of our Clean Network, and worked with them along with their other co-founder, David Jaffe, who's part of the Harvard program that I was initiating. So it was through that program that I got connected with David and made them aware of the Clean Collection. And so this is, they've incorporated the Clean Collection and many other collections and taken it in making it a complementary direction here. So, so I just wanted to introduce them first. Dan is the Chief Content Officer for SubjectToClimate and has 11 years of experience teaching STEM and humanities from elementary school through high school levels. And Margaret is also co-founder and Chief Operating Officer for SubjectToClimate, and she was previously taught high school social studies. And she completed her master's degree at Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she developed climate change leadership curricula. And they're going to talk to us today about how to make your climate lesson interdisciplinary with SubjectToClimate. So with that, Margaret and Dan, I will turn it over to you, and I believe you can share your screens.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, and really nice to be here. I will share. Yeah, it's great to be with all of you here today. And I think that this presentation can be a little bit more conversational. I know there are 10 people in the room right now, which is wonderful. And so I'm hoping, I'm requesting, can you please put your name? And then if you are currently a teacher, elementary school, middle school, high school, and then the subject area. If you are not a teacher, if you could just maybe a sentence or two about what you do or your title, just so Margaret and I have a better sense of our audience.
Hey, Dan, one quick thing just to help you frame your talk here with us is that, 1 o'clock Eastern is a hard time for a lot of people to do. These are recorded calls. So your talk is not just to us, it's to people who will be watching the recording, and they have a variety of different functions in this space.
Okay, super. Thank you, Frank.
Sure thing.
Appreciate it. Cool. And so today we're going to look at SubjectToClimate, and we're proud to partner with CLEAN. I'll tell you a little bit about how I started teaching climate change in ancient history class in the middle school. And then we'll go through SubjectToClimate, and I'll demo everything we have on our website, highlighting interdisciplinary stuff, and especially what we have for non-science teachers in grades K through 12. And lastly, we'll look at our lesson plans. And thank you for typing all that in the chat. That's very helpful. And so Tamara, thanks for introducing me. So I've been a teacher for 11 years. This is my first year not in the classroom. I joined SubjectToClimate full time after last school year, after a year and a third in the pandemic, teaching in the pandemic. I'm in charge of all content at SubjectToClimate. So that includes all of our resources and all of our lesson plans. And I care deeply about the climate crisis and want to do everything possible to change climate change education to transform the world. That's my goal. And Margaret, you can speak a little bit more about yourself too.
Hi, everybody. I'm really glad to be on this call. I see a lot of familiar faces, and it's really great to join you guys in this conversation. So as Tamara mentioned, I've been a high school teacher for several years. I taught economics and business, and that really sparked my interest in teaching about climate change, actually. And that's kind of why SubjectToClimate emerged and why we're having this session. Frank insinuated and said, a lot of states are making climate change part of the curriculum in all content areas, not just science. And so what we're hoping to show you today is a little bit more of tools of how educators can make their climate change lesson more interdisciplinary, and how science educators can bring in those math teachers, English teachers, and art teachers who will, in some states be required to teach about climate change, but we firmly believe that it should be all educators. So we're excited about this talk.
Thanks, Margaret. And then just to lead a bit of a discussion here, we have this prompt, who are climate change teachers? And feel free to answer this in the chat or raise your hand and we can talk. But when you think of that, when you think of this question, who do you think of? Grades, subjects, even adjectives to describe people who teach about climate change. or is there somebody perhaps, a role model or an educator who you think about when you think about a climate change teacher, somebody who brought you into the fold? Don, I like that. Everyone, I agree.
It's definitely all, and it's not even just teachers, it's all educators at this point in time and beyond. But I mean, definitely all teachers, all disciplines, all levels.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you. So I'd just like to share my story. And, when we talk, Frank and everybody, when we talk about teaching climate change, I found myself teaching 6th grade ancient history for 11 years, basically. Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, Rome, India, China, stuff like that. And sort of as my awareness of the climate crisis grew, I found myself wanting to teach about it and thinking that I couldn't. And so it was tough for me. And so finally, my last year at school, I made a connection and went for it. And so here's what I did. Here's my case study, basically. I had learned about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia. And it's just on the border of Sudan. It's in Ethiopia. It's on the Blue Nile. And so the Nile flows north. So from there, it flows to Sudan and then into Egypt. And I connected it to ancient Egyptian history and to the Nile and the importance of the Nile. And so what I did is I created a modified SOUL, a self-organized learning environment where I had these 2 guiding questions. And I said, organize yourself into groups and you have to explore one of these 2 questions. The role of water in ancient Egypt, transportation, source of food, gods that are associated with the Nile. And then some people looking at this regional conflict over water. And so I had these multiple groups, each studying them, and then we all shared what they learned and had a bit of a writing assignment afterwards. And I found that this connection to this conflict of water scarcity and, this problem will get worse because of climate crisis and drought and all these things that we know, but connecting it to the modern era and to news is really, really powerful for the students and making it real. And I think that's the purpose of a history teacher is you study history to better understand our world today. And so I did it, I'd never done it before and I think it went well and, the students liked it. And that was my connection. So that's an ancient history connection to climate change is that case study. And as we go, please feel free to ask questions in the chat or throw your hand up and we can kind of answer questions as we go and talk as we go, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end as well. And so, like I said, big impact with the student outcomes. I think it went well. It was good. They had never heard of it before, and I was glad I did it. And we talked about climate change. And so here's just a little bit more background on our organization, and I'll pass to Margaret to explain a bit more.
Right, so Dan's story is a lot of, we're so happy as a non-science educator that Dan started teaching about climate change, but the reality is that even though we believe that all educators should be climate change educators, a lot of educators don't see themselves that way. I know as a social science teacher, especially not even in history and most of the time in business management and econ, I never saw myself as a climate change teacher, and it is quite intimidating. And so this is kind of the spark that started Subject to Climate, really looking at all educators, what are the barriers they face when they want to integrate climate change into their curriculum. But as Tamara mentioned, this goes way back, even before me and David Jaffe and David Rhodes met. David Jaffe and Tamara actually met through the Harvard ALI program, the Advanced Leadership Institution. And so David was very inspired by Clean Network and learned so much from Tamara, and the approach to being, as Frank always emphasizes, the middle, the connector, like having not duplicative efforts, but something to really unify everything. And Clean does an amazing job with its focus on NGSS resources with a framework to guide educators on climate literacy. And so when David and Tamara met, David was thinking, we want to further what CLEAN does to broaden the population that it reaches. So we took a slightly different approach because we believe that, you know, a lot of teachers do feel intimidated with climate literacy and climate change. And so we added some features to make it easier for non-science teachers and non-technical teachers to kind of jump into climate change. And we believe that this is going to be really important because right now, yes, there's New Jersey that has adopted climate change education standards, but soon there'll be more states that do so. And us being teachers before we know, and I'm sure everybody on this call knows that once large scale education reforms are made, it's really difficult for teachers to be enabled to do these changes. So we know that it's going to require a lot of coordination for everybody to support these teachers. And so on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about working with CLEAN. So if you can, yeah, great. And so, yes, we will get the new CLEAN logo and we have it right here. So that means we do know about it. It looks great. And so when we first started, we looked at CLEAN and CLEAN was our first content partner and provided very powerful NGSS aligned resources. So the resources are integrated and Dan's going to show you guys a little bit how that looks like and how that they can connect to other resources aligned to Common Core, C3, etc., so that climate change can be seen as interdisciplinary and outside of science as well. So this workshop we really think it's going to be how do you pair the resources in CLEAN with other resources to teach climate change outside of science as well. And on here are, you know, we see ourselves as the online K-12 connector to credible, engaging, and unbiased climate resources for all educators at no cost. And so many of these benefits are the same as CLEAN because we believe CLEAN did a great model of a collection of what resources needs to be shown in front of a teacher, credible, teacher reviewed. But in the next slide, we'll talk about the additional features that we have. And Dan is also going to demo this as well. So some of the additional features include resources, as I mentioned, that are aligned to Common Core, C3, and other non-science standards. We also, I think we had recently integrated national art standards as well. We also now have a feature of student-friendly news articles that can be adjusted by reading level because we know that student relevancy is really important. Students love staying on top of what's going around the world, and the more that they can connect climate change with what's going around them, the more involved students will be. And then last but not least, inquiry-based and interdisciplinary lesson plans written by teachers. So we have a group of teachers from the teacher task force that, you know, show other teachers, you know, if I'm an English teacher, how do I take a resource and integrate it to what I already teach? Which again, I think is going to be really critical with different states that are now integrating climate change into a core curriculum. So I'm going to pass it over to Dan to show you these additional resources and show you how SubjectToClimate works. Oops.
Thanks, Margaret. Sorry, I'm bouncing around there on the slides a little bit. I'm not sure what's happening. So I will walk us through our website. And basically, I'm going to demo three things and show you how our platform works. One is our resource database, and one is our student-friendly news articles. Or sorry, that's two. One, two, and then the third are our lesson plans. And so here is our homepage, and we're actually going to head to our resource database first. You can actually search in here as well. And here you actually get all three things that I mentioned, right? So here's lesson plans, our database, and then our news articles. So I'll start with our database. So say I want to teach about the Arctic. I can simply search in here. And what you can see, each of these tiles is a resource. You can see this is from CLEAN on caribou and how climate change is affecting them too. And so each one of these tiles is a specific resource. There are a lot of ways to filter for resources and to find resources on our platform. So I showed you the first way here is by searching. You can see that we have 18 results here. After typing in Arctic, you can also filter by provider, right? So everything up here, including clean. And I'll actually remove this and I'll show you what it looks like here. So we have 1,013 items on our platform right now. And so one way to search is going through providers. And so some stuff that was mentioned before we began, you know, stuff from NOAA or NASA Climate Kids, all these different places where we've found good stuff. You can also filter by subject. As you can see, it's heavy in the sciences. So if I click here, we get the 790. If I want to do science and econ, I can click both, right? And so it filters down even further. Furthermore, we've got grades and regions, right? So say I'm doing econ and science in 8th grade, right? And I'm doing econ and science in 8th grade, and I want to highlight the polar regions, right? So there are a lot of ways to filter this down to find exactly what you need to find. And I'll show you the last two as well. So finally, we have, or second to last, we have types, right? So these are the different types of resources we have on our platform. As you can see, we have a lot of videos. And then, like Margaret was saying, we have 6 sets of standards at the moment. So we do have NGSS, just like Clean, and then C3, Common Core ELA, Common Core Math, the arts, and then the foreign language standards as well. And so that is our resource database. And so if we take a look at just one of them, if we look at the same one from Clean, this is what it looks like, where you click view resource and it takes you to Clean. And so synopsis and teaching tips. We've also got some related resources here as well, including linking to a lesson plan, notes from our scientists, and then this one's just connected to this one standard on ecosystems. So that is our resource database. And I'd also like to highlight another resource that's not science and that's not from Clean. And so similarly with the Arctic, so the same theme. And so this is a watercolor by Jill Pelto. If you're not familiar, she did a painting for the Time magazine in 2020 of climate change. And so we're officially partners with her. And so we have a lot of her artwork here as well. And so this will take us directly to her website. And so the data here is the melting sea ice, right? You know, paired with this, these two Arctic foxes. And so this is just an example of, you know, you can see standards here of artwork, right? So how to teach climate change in art class specifically. So we have, yes, NGSS, and then we have these National Core Arts standards as well. So that is our resource database, and that's how it works. And so happy to take questions here. I can move forward to the news articles too. Yes, Frank.
Wow.
Thanks.
Major props. You guys have been busy, very busy. So when you pull down that select a provider,
yeah, here.
Yeah, wow. This really offers coherence to people who are trying to go through all this digital information that, I mean, I'm going back like the beginning of Clean in Tamara, and when we were putting that proposal in, we were seeing a cacophony of things that were, some were good, most were not, for a whole host of reasons. And any teacher would have a hard time finding, but we were focused on science at the time. And so you've kind of leapfrogged us in a beautiful way, which I'm deeply impressed. I mean, I got to dig in to a lot of this. Wow, I'm just, you know, serious props. What I'm seeing.
I appreciate that, Frank. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for that comment, Frank. Yeah, James, you have a comment as well.
Yeah, I guess I'd be looking at it as well. It is quite wonderful. in terms of maybe you're getting to this, so I'll just wait on that a little bit of looking at understanding what the community is. Speaking from educators in schools, doing work with many schools, but a very holistic school in Washington, D.C., for instance, I think the thing we're looking for the most is community. We're looking for teachers, schools, students who are doing work on climate change so that we can learn from each other, share with each other, and talk with each other. That's what's hardest to find for us. So anything, not that we aren't finding it, but that's the thing that we see the most. So anyway, if at some point to get into community, and then maybe I'll just leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. And we have this section on our website that has received very little traffic at the moment. And we're building that as well. We started a Facebook group, actually. It's called SubjectToClimate Champions, basically to create that sense of community, share new resources, even for a space for teachers to emotionally lean on each other. How do you teach this? How do you frame this when you're talking about climate change to fifth graders, and it might hit them like a wall of bricks. And so that's what we've started. And so we're trying to grow that community as well. Yeah. Thanks for that question, James. I'll move forward into our news articles, which we actually just launched last week and is thrilling, to say the least. So we partnered with The Juice, and so you can see their logo right here. And The Juice is an organization that daily, every weekday, they deliver news articles. And what we do for our platform is we have a partnership with them where we can take, they share with us, I should say, the climate change ones. And so that's right here. And so if we click into one, this one's from January 21st. And so there's this coral reef that was found deep in the Pacific. And so what's beautiful about this is there are 4 grade bands that Juice does, and then we have integrated that. So it's written for 5, 6, and then if I click 7, 8, you see the text change. And you even see the vocabulary words change. And then we can go to 9th, 10th reading level. Again, more complex language. And then 11 plus reading level. And again, more complex language. So a few features here too is if you click here, this is integrated as well, where the Juice does this, where you get the definition for vocabulary words. And then for each of the grade bands, you also get a question, one reading comprehension question. And this one is connected to reading informational text for Common Core, ELA. And you can click it, and then it tells you if it's right or wrong. And there's a different question for each grade band as well. And they're all connected to Common Core. And so this is a great resource where it makes it relevant, right? It makes it current, right? Students want to read this. So this is great for like bell ringers, or like the in the cracks, kind of that in between time where you're like not sure what to do, or it's a social studies class and you say, let's do current events. Let's go to SubjectToClimate and see what they've got. And so, there's a climate change news article almost every single day. And so as you can see, this one is from today. Lamborghini's move to EVs is from today. The last feature that I missed is you can also click this button up here where you get news updates. And so you can get these specific news articles in your inbox if you want to, as a teacher, just get these updates specifically, not like the general SubjectToClimate newsletter. And so that's those are our news articles that we now have. And actually one more feature, I apologize, is at the bottom here, if we go to, let's go back to the coral reef one, this one. And then at the bottom, we have related teaching resources. So you click this and it auto searches coral reef. And so it takes you to our resource database, and these are our 13 related items that can be used in the classroom. And that's number 2. And so again, I'll pause if there are any comments or questions with our news articles.
So you just said that you just launched this last week. Do you have any sense of the engagement that teachers have had? I know it's kind of early to judge that, but I just thought I'd ask anyway.
definitely. I think Margaret could answer that better than I could.
I don't have it off the top of my like right now, but we just launched it quietly on our website. We're actually going to send a message to our users this week that we have it, because we were kind of scared. We've done internal testing, but then we wanted to quietly launch it if our super users would use it and see if there was any bugs or things we had to fix. So this week we will launch, and I think that there will be more indication of our traffic, but I would shortly in the chat let you guys know if there are, simple data points on how many teachers are using it.
Okay, thanks.
Cool, thanks, Margaret. And Anne, I answered your question in the chat too. So it's not all climate change, it's everything, but kind of like 1 out of 6 is climate change pretty much every day. It's kind of an average. And so we pull the climate ones onto our platform. So I'll show you our third offering, which are our lesson plans. And so and Frank, go ahead too, before we jump in there.
Sorry, Dan, just to go back to the juice. I mean, it's a really cool service. How far back can you go with this service? Because like for example, I put in COP26 in the search on your site and I didn't get anything because it looks like it's only moving stuff from a certain date forward as opposed to anything back some number of months, right? So like you would think COP26 would be a big deal. Teachers might be looking for it. And, given the way this is working, it looks like it only is going to give you that information forward, not, on your website. Any thoughts on that point?
Yeah, thanks for that. So as you can see here, I went backwards. And so it actually just goes till January 3rd.
Right.
That's as far back as we go because we just started doing it. And so we
will
kind
it
of
always go back to January 3rd, 2022?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think we want to keep that as a database. And so even, historically, whether that's 1 year or 2 years or 5 or whatever, we'd like to keep the news articles. Yeah.
But to Frank's point, we do have access to the juice, and they've been running longer than we have.
Right.
So we just haven't done that. And I think you bring in a good point that Dan and I can go back to the team. There may be like big historical events, not historical meaning like, early 1900s, but like, current events that we can utilize, such as COP26. I'm fairly sure the juice has that. We have the capability to do that. We haven't done that. So that's something I'll take note of.
Yeah, I really think that there are going to be, it could be as simple as the juice started on date 1 and all climate content from there. That's just, it's just data if you have a syndicated approach. But I definitely think, because then trying to figure out which events are ones the teachers might, that's more work maybe. But syndications are really powerful tools. So I think, just consider it that way.
Yeah, that's a good point, Frank, because this is different from our resource database. And I know it's similar to Clean, where stuff has to have a long shelf life to be included in our database. If it's a news article from a year ago and then it just kind of ages out super fast, then it's not useful. But if it's under the, the news articles, then it's a different beast. So thank you. Great. So let's look at our lesson plans here. So if you click here, the easiest way to get to our lesson plans is to go grade. So say I am a 7th grade teacher and I'm an English teacher. I click here. And what we've done is actually organize each subject into topics. And so we are building this out. And so we've got media literacy under English language arts, poetry analysis, writing, claim, evidence, reasoning paragraphs, writing poetry. And so that's what we've got as far as 7th grade English lesson plans. And if we just take a look at this one, I can show you. Actually, let's do another search. I want to show you one more thing, actually. We have a few 3rd through 5th grade interdisciplinary units as well that are terrific. And so there's actually this button here. So if I'm, say, a 3rd grade homeroom teacher, at the moment we have 3 units, one on green spaces. And so you can see they're lined up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a 5 lesson unit on air quality, and a 6 lesson unit on renewable energy.
Are these individual lessons or are they sequential lessons?
They're meant to be done sequentially, but if you click into one, they are, the platform kind of stands alone. You could do this as a standalone, but it works well in the progression. And so let's head back to that first example here, 7th ELA, and I'd like to show you this one called Write Your Own Ekphrastic Poem. And I see that question, Eric. I'll walk through this and then we can do some questions. Thanks. And so for our lesson plans, we have a synopsis, and then we take a 3I approach to how we break up the lesson plan: inquire, investigate, and inspire. There are detailed directions here under each of these headings for the 3 parts of the lesson plan, and then accompanying teaching tips as well, and the standards connected to them. So lots of ELA for this one. And so this one's cool. Or actually, I should say the other kind of game changer, I think, for teachers is the accompanying teacher slideshow, to make it basically as easy as possible for teachers to run, saying, here, you throw this on the board, you can run this with your kids, after you preview it for a little bit. If you're unfamiliar with ekphrastic poetry, it's poetry about a work of art. So it could be a poem about a sculpture, a poem about a photograph, a poem about a painting. So we're partnered with Climate Outreach as well. And they have this excellent database, these really powerful, poignant pictures of climate change. And so in this lesson, students pick one of these pictures and they write a poem about it. And then the third part is they share it with their classmates. And so this is really, poetry and English language arts, this ekphrastic poetry. And that is basically how our lesson plans work. Yeah. I can open up to questions, and Margaret, I see your response. I can read it here too. Eric, thanks for the question. Yeah, and Margaret's response is spot on. Sort of as they're created, we're iterating as we go.
Just to follow up, is it kind of like, do you use some kind of algorithms also to kind of search within lessons, that maybe state that they're NGSS, connected, or that they, topically cover X or Y discipline? Or is it sort of an individual, I could imagine you would need some digital tools to do that, as well as sort of just reviewing the lesson personally as a human, sort of diagnosing them or looking at them, evaluating them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's another way to get to our lesson plans that I didn't show, Eric, where if you actually go to our database and you go to providers, you can go to SubjectToClimate, which is down here. And so it actually brings up all 45 of our lesson plans. And so you can see in green, right, STC lesson plan.
One thing, Dan, I think one thing you should point out is that while you've got resources from all those different providers, the lesson plans were created by SubjectToClimate, by your teacher task force. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So the lesson plans aren't coming from other places. These are all lesson plans created in this content by you.
That's right, and I should have been clearer. Yeah, so these are all created by teachers who work for SubjectToClimate. And the one I showed you, I created, that was my name was there, but they're created by lots of different teachers. So I think, Eric, to your question, you can search this way, and then you can go to standards down here, right? So you have lesson plans, and say you're doing NGSS. We've got 27 that are connected to NGSS.
Thanks so much. And like Frank, I'm just wowed at the searchability. Like, this is probably the best sort of interactive website I've seen that has all these different ways of searching and merging information. So thanks for sharing.
Of course. Yeah, and I'll definitely pass that on to our engineer and our UI UX person, because they've been hard at work. So I'll let them know. Thanks. Yeah.
Frank?
Yeah, so Dan, we just touched on an interesting point. In Clean, we never built, very early we built a couple lessons, but we don't really build lessons, right? That's not our we don't have the bandwidth for that. Not that we don't want to, but there's an interesting thing that happens in the review process where we go through our whole review process and we get down to the things we are going to take to the camp, the review camp, right? And as a reviewer, and I've been in many of them, if not all of them, you get a resource and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then there's like, ooh, why did you do that? Or that link is not really connected to the best version of what that could go to. And so you get this thing where we try and clean things up in, sorry for the pun, in the teacher notes, right? Or the review notes, but we don't actually touch the resource itself. And so one thought for your group is to, given that you have 45 resources you've made, is to complement a clean resource by rebuilding it, fixing it, taking all those review comments that are in the clean resource and say, oh, I see what we could do, and fix it in the resource itself and rebrand it as one of your resources, because you know this. So many resources have started somewhere, then somebody else did another version of it, and then somebody else added another version of it. That's part of the problem Clean has, is that there's like 7 cloud in a jar lessons. One of them is really awesome.
Yeah.
And not everyone knows which one's the awesome one, but you have an opportunity here to take a resource that's sort of awesome, was awesome, but is kind of aging, and improve it, expand it. So, it's just a thought. We've always seen this in Clean, but we don't have the engine to actually fix lessons. Rarely. Every now and then.
Frank, if you fix it, then the original resource is still out there. How is it to know that here's an improved version of it?
This is one of the problems we have in Clean, right? Is that we do pull things out of the collection periodically, but not because if there's a better version. I mean, we've talked about this over the years, but I still think whatever you promote, if there's an improvement, I mean, I'm just saying you have an opportunity here because of your process is a little more expanded than our process. And so it's just, it's an opportunity, but to build a resource is a lot of work. Sometimes finding something that's close and improving it is a faster way of building a resource than starting from scratch. But Tamara, your point still lands, is that there's going to be redundancies in your system as I see it, because you could pull from NOAA, Clean, which also has NOAA, and people would be seeing 2 versions of the same thing. But I don't know if there's any way around that.
Yeah, that makes sense, Frank. I think the goal is to get teachers where they need to go in the fewest amount of clicks, and to go, to get directly there. And to your point about finding good stuff, I think one of our value adds is making these lesson plans is taking something that's good or that's pretty good, and then building this whole like structure around it, teacher slideshow, teaching tips. I became aware of the climate visuals gallery, and when I was still part-time at SubjectToClimate, created this lesson plan, so it'd be really easy for English teachers to use.
I can also add to that, you can feel, Dan, I think the green space could be a good lesson plan to kind of showcase as well. One of the things, the benefit of having the resource database is we also see what's missing out there. For example, there aren't that many elementary lesson plans are out there, which was really interesting for us to analyze. And green space unit is kind of what evolved from it. We do take resources in our resource database, but it has been tremendously hard and we're now looking at, other subjects that are not, so Dan's showing you how everything's integrated, how there's resources, like these are resources in the resource database, and the SCC lesson plans give you a framework. Our idea is not through SCC lesson plans to be the only thing that a teacher uses. And we see it as more of like inspiration and modeling that tells that English or elementary school teacher that, oh, okay, this is an example of how I can take a resource from the database and then create a lesson plan. And we think that's also going to be important with New Jersey, that a lot of teachers in PE will need exemplar lesson plans. A lot of teachers in visual arts will need exemplar lesson plans. But yeah, thank you, Dan, for showing.
Of course, yeah. And James, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you again. I am definitely enjoying it, and the discussion is here wonderful. I'm looking for certain things as we're talking, and I'm looking for where are the students? Where do the students find other students? Where do we find what the students are doing? What's the student zone, and or so we say multi-generational that goes on it. From our experience too is when we practice what we're saying so much these days, that well, there's an old saying in the Bay Area, which was if you don't like the news, go out and make some of your own, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if the students are doing things about climate change, it's a whole nother world. And we found that the communities in our schools went from, yes, we need to be teaching holistic climate change, to in the front page of all our newsletters and a discussion is what the school is talking about, is what Climate Club is out doing, what the students are doing about climate change, and is engaging the whole families. And that's what really has taken off throughout a whole county in Maryland, is the students are taking action on climate change and entering the news. So, I mean, I don't want to be negative at all. It's like encouraging you're young and starting on this to be sure that this is not a top down, we're going to tell you things kind of, that's climate change is not a, we're going to tell the kids what they need to know, and in 20 years they'll do something about it, you know?
Yeah, that's, I'm sorry, James. Those are really powerful points. And yeah, I mean, the goal is to empower students to, again, we know where the science stands to do everything, right? Just like all of us. So I think one highlight one item here is in our lesson plans, the third section is always inspire, right? So to inspire kids to actually take action. So if we look at kind of the progression of this air quality unit, the last lesson is a no idling campaign. And it basically gives students the power to all these documents to basically take some data. How many cars are idling? Can you change that if your school is a car-centric school, and to empower them. Another spot we have that on our website that we're kind of building out, and it is kind of tricky actually, is we have climate action as a subject over here. It's pretty hard to tag things as climate action, right? It's like there's an opportunity for students to do something about it. But we do have that as a subject itself. And we do have 424 items. It's pretty difficult, it's pretty nuanced to kind of tag stuff as that, but that's our goal.
If you don't mind me jumping in, Dan, just to encourage you on that, that's not as, at our school, we have included a subject of climate action. It's one of our classes. We have English language arts, we have social sciences, we have English, we have the various sciences, but we have a climate action club that is a class all year round. So it has now become a class. You have a legitimate subject matter there.
That's amazing.
You're not off base.
I've always been, like running the clubs at lunchtime and stuff. That's what I did. But to have it as a class I just love to hear that. Yeah.
We had a question in the chat that says, would you be willing to talk about your marketing strategy a bit more? How have you reached users or teachers? So one of the things we think about is, what does a teacher do when they're trying to find resources? And we ask many teachers and think about when we're a teacher, and the first thing they'll do is they'll type in something on Google. So what we've done is we've really doubled down on search engine optimization. The cool thing is that we've used a couple of technical strategies to rank higher on Google, but we've identified high volume keywords and then, worked with to really enhance our chances of showing up on Google. That's where a large majority of our engaged users come from. So, at a first glance, these are just blog posts, right? 5 ways to teach about heat waves, but actually these are very carefully crafted and they bring in our most users. So one of the cool things is if you go to, let me see, Google and you type in keywords, by the way, every day it changes. So I hope this is still the case. But if you type in climate change activities for students, climate change hands-on activities, climate change games for the classroom, words like that, we will come up number one, or at least on the first page. So that's our main strategy. And that's how, like, we always put ourselves in the shoes of a teacher. Now, other strategies, of course, social media, there are certain ways to handle organic and paid social media, but where do teachers always go to? They also go to Teachers Pay Teachers. So we've actually started putting our lesson plans for free on Teachers Pay Teachers, and that's our number 2 organic traffic source. So just always putting yourself in the shoes of teachers, like what are teachers doing the night before? Google Teachers Pay Teachers. So that's where a lot of our traffic comes from. But we're hoping to do more quote unquote field marketing, large networks and things like that to start being in front of teachers.
Thank you. That sounds fantastic. That's amazing that you were able to get in the top search returns.
Well, Margaret, you should say that you're working with an
It's not me.
organization to help them. They didn't do this themselves. They actually partnered with, was it called 97th Floor, if I remember correctly?
I should have mentioned, we shouldn't take all the credit. We partner with a digital marketing agency that does the keyword research for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, it would be great if Clean could learn a little bit from that work and how it's done.
Well, there's another way to do that, right? And this is a question, because you mentioned, you're looking at analytics, right? And so in Clean, we have our own, we've been using Google Analytics and other data, but one of our strategies is syndication, right? So Clean is syndicated to climate.gov. And we share analytics. I would think all the providers would want to see, like, who's referring. So it's a mutual ecosystem of referencing each other. But if you're driving traffic to us, or we're driving traffic to you, the only way we know this is if we look at our analytics and do the analysis and see, and then you can work that. But the fact that Clean is well positioned in this, we should be able to see that. But if people are going and getting the information from SubjectToClimate, that should be part of our success, and likewise the other way around, right? So I think all of us need to kind of approach marketing in a combined way, as opposed to a competitive way, because then it's just going to replicate the look for some of these, the number of ads are almost a page, and it's like, which one? But I think there's just something there. So I mean, I'd love to see, like, what kind of growth are you getting in your data yet on use?
So the cool thing, when we first launched August 2021, we were getting 100 users a week. Now we're getting around 2,200 unique users. So that's kind of the growth that we're seeing right now. So if I look at, I'm pulling up Google Analytics right now, and we've used Google. Our marketing team is pretty, like, they're teachers, and teachers are really good at learning things, and they picked up Google Analytics, Google Data Studio and everything. And so what Frank said is not false at all. The more that we link to each other, the better domain authority we're building for each other's website, and the more that we're going to appear on other Google searches. So there's something to be said about having a partners page and linking each other. It actually does a huge load of benefits for everybody.
Can you remind me, Margaret, if somebody clicks on a resource that is from Clean in your collection, does it go to Clean? It does go to Clean?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
And we do
Well,
quarterly web analytics for Clean, and we see the top hits. We will let you know once SubjectToClimate is going to make it into there, and so that you get some feedback on what the traffic is that you're bringing back to Clean. But you've done a terrific job. This is amazing.
Yes. So are there any, we're already after the top of the hour. Are there any other questions for Margaret or Dan? Well, I just want to thank the two of you for sharing. I've been hearing about this as it's grown over time, and I knew it would be really of interest to this community. So thank you both so much for your presentation today.
Thanks for having us. It's nice chatting with all of you today. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Take
Yeah,
care. See
thank
ya.
you.
Bye.
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 Deeply impressed. Wow.
It was, have we stopped recording?
Give me a second.